Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Mara Ruckman on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from Missouri, or Misery as I call it. I have a friend that lives there, and I told her all about that. But before we get into all that, she's a women's physique division IFBB pro, as well as a baker, more power to her. We'll talk about it a little bit later about just how baking and bodybuilding seem to mix for her. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Mara, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, I ask this question first off every single time, no matter what. What is the weather like today?
The weather is very hot and sunny and muggy, just like a typical day in Missouri.
Like I said, I've had that friend and he's told me stories too where it's just got to deal with a little bit more of the warmer temperatures here. And it's going to be like 101 degrees on Monday here in a couple of days in Minnesota. So, yeah, we're getting into the dog days of summer here. But before we depress everyone with, the heat that we have, hopefully people are listening to this in a little bit of a cooler climate. Why don't you just first off give us your backstory on what really inspired and motivated you to get in shape and eventually become a bodybuilder?
Sure. So I've always been pretty athletic. I've grown up playing sports, soccer, volleyball, basketball. Weirdly enough, been naturally good at most everything that I've done. But as far as the sport of bodybuilding, my lifting started with powerlifting. So before I had kids, I got into powerlifting, and I felt like that was a great foundation that transitioned into bodybuilding. Um, so I've always admired bodybuilders. I've always thought they looked awesome, and in the back of my mind, I never thought that that was going to be me. I didn't think it was in my reach, but I think I just didn't have the knowledge to get there. But so after I had my second daughter, um, I tried to lose the baby weight, and I also wanted a goal to work towards. And so my goal was to compete or do a show and compete. And I started out with figure, or that was that's the look that I liked. And so I had a friend. The reason I kind of looked into that was I had a friend who did a show because I didn't think it was something I could achieve. But so whenever a friend did it and she competed, I kind of was like, you know what? If she can do it, I can do it. Um, so that kind of inspired me to hire the coach and get going. So my initial goal, we had to lose the baby weight, and then whenever we lose the weight by gaining muscle at the same time, and so that transitioned into prep to do my first competition in 2018.
And before you got into this sport, there are so many myths and misconceptions about the sport that I hear from a lot of people because it's not as popular as a sport as obviously I think it should be. But when you add the female side to it as well, that just gets multiplied by like 100. Were there any myths or misconceptions that you had about the sport, or was it one of those things where you just wanted to dive right in and see what happens?
I didn't know a whole lot about bodybuilding. I knew nothing actually. So I really didn't have any misconceptions about it. I didn't know what I was doing, quite honestly. So I just hired the coach and we just dove right in and did it.
That is one thing that I've rarely met people that have that experience in bodybuilding where they just have that knowledge before they dive in. It's a lot of this podcast really should just be renamed to trial and error because that is one thing that really happens as well. But I mean, just on top of everything that goes into this sport too, a lot of people just don't understand that it's so much more of a mental sport than it is a physical sport. What has this journey been like for you mentally?
Mentally, I think it's really helped me develop mental strength. Um, with the discipline that comes with prep, you just have to have this mind. You have to change your mindset, and um, you just kind of have to get through those hard days. And I think those, going through those hard days, the outcome is going to be great. So, mentally, you just, even though those days are rough, you just know like it's only temporary. The pain is only temporary, and you can get through it mentally. And I feel like it's just uh, allowed me to gain mental strength. I think, with the discipline and everything that goes into it.
I mean, one of the biggest myths and misconceptions that I hear about this is, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram and other things, but there are still so many women in the gym that have that fear that if they walk into the gym and they pick up, one dumbbell, they're going to put on, like 50 pounds of muscle overnight. Did you ever have that fear when you were getting started, even with powerlifting? Or was it one of those things where you just knew that that wasn't true? And even if that's the case, I bet you still hear that all the time to this day. How do you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think with powerlifting and stuff, I knew, you know, you can't just add muscle. Muscle does not grow that fast or that easy, or everybody would have a lot of muscle. But yeah, I hear that a lot. I also do some kind of personal training on the side with nutrition and things like that. So, whenever you sit down and talk to people, they're like, "Well, I don't want to get that big," and it's like I have to tell them, like, "You don't understand. Like, I've been in the lifting world for over 10 years. I've been doing bodybuilding specifically for what 5 years now. So I'm like, it takes a lot. Like, and that's a lot of consistency throughout those years. So yeah, I mean, you get that often, and it's just ignorance.
If that does happen to you, give me a call and I'll spend my entire life savings to train with you then, because you have found the secret that everybody and their brother has been looking for in this life. So I also love to talk genetics on this podcast because so many times, oh my God, I want his arms, I want her abs, I want their back, and you just strangle them because you can train just like someone, you can eat just like them, you can do everything like them. You're not going to see the same results as them, unfortunately, just because everyone is built differently. But on top of that, everyone always has that one body part that really, really takes off when they get started working out. And then they have that one body part that just drags behind it. They have to train to oblivion when they get started off. What was one body part that took off for you? And what was one body part that you just had to drag behind?
Legs have always been good for me. I know a lot of people struggle with that, but um, I've always had strong legs. So I guess genetically, I've always been gifted in that area. Um, yeah, legs have always been easy for me. And I think with powerlifting, with a background in powerlifting, my strength has always been really good. So I always, with legs, like I just push myself and I'm able to lift that heavy weight to grow them. So that's never been an area that I struggled in. I would say my most lacking area is where my shoulders and arms.
That is an answer. I mean, shoulders is one of the most popular answers. Other than like, so I'm 6'3", so my legs and my lower body, I've always made the joke I could inject pure muscle into my legs, and they're not going to gain ounces. Now, I'm the guy that can do 10,000 calf raises, and there's never going to be any development there whatsoever. So, you know, there's that. But I mean, for shoulders, what do you try to do for that? Because like, I'm making a list right now of all the body parts that people have said for like the one that takes off and one that doesn't. And shoulders is by far the number one thing. And women like everyone wants to develop shoulders, especially women. So how do you try to get them to, pop out? Because a lot of people, it's just their number one pet peeve body part.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, so last year when I competed in St. Louis and in Tulsa, my upper body did not match my lower body. So I needed to bring up my shoulders. So obviously we pushed food. I mean, I was eating probably like 3,000 calories a day on my training meal program. And so we pushed food. So of course that's important. But as far as training, um, I mean, my coach was basically like train shoulders and your arms just as hard as you would train your legs. So I did. Um, so I just pushed the weight and I just made sure, and I did more of like mind muscle connection type stuff. And I just, shoulders, I just went in and killed it every time, pretty much.
I mean, so many people don't understand that if you want to see significant growth in an area that's lacking, you do have to train more than once a week. That's one thing that we hear of all the time too. It's like so many people just train their shoulders or that one body part just once a week, but then it's like, no, you're probably gonna have to train it more than that just to be able to get it grow as well. But nutrition, let's be completely honest, one of the hardest things on, I mean, especially for me, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I never even competed. But what were some of the bigger nutritional changes that you made when you really started to take things seriously in the gym?
Nutritional changes. Well, I think in the sport of bodybuilding, the longer you do it, the smarter you become about your eating. Um, so one change for me was just sticking to the plan and making sure not to go off track. I mean, of course, we're not perfect, and I like to eat, but overall, I mean, this last off season, I mean, I was probably like 90% on plan, and I took my cheat meals seriously. Like if my coach gave me a cheat meal, it was just stick to the cheat meal. Don't overdo it. Don't stuff my face with anything and everything that I've been craving. So I think just nutritionally, I've just stuck to the plan and it worked.
Well, now let's get right down to it because you are a baker as well as a bodybuilder, and that to me is probably the worst profession to be in as a bodybuilder, at least for me personally, because I am one of those people where I would be way too tempted, and I don't care what anyone says. I would be licking the cookie dough, I would be, doing all that. I mean, I would be a mess to try to do that. So, first of all, had you always been a baker before you got into bodybuilding? And second of all, how do you deal with sort of the duality of being both a baker and a bodybuilder?
So yeah, baking for me, I've always enjoyed it, but I started doing cakes, and the reason I started doing cakes was because I had with my daughters with their birthdays and stuff. I would order cakes, and then I was just like, you know what? Like, I could do this. I can do this myself. Like, I can make their cakes. So it all started with just doing cakes for their birthdays, and then I started making other cakes, and people started really liking my cakes and complimented me on it. So I decided to start selling them. So it's actually more of a side business that I have, just like a side gig. Um, so it's not full time, but yeah, I mean it's challenging to be a baker because yeah, um, especially I have a sweet tooth, but at the same time, um, it's all about the mentality thing. With the discipline, it's that if I lick the batter after I'm done baking, that's going to put me further away from my goals. And just having that mentality just gets me through that. It doesn't even bother me.
Please tell me that you at least take a little break if you're on prep or anything like that, because as you get closer to a show, I could not imagine having that willpower to just look at something and bake it and then not take at least a tiny bite of it, because that would just drive me crazy.
No, I still on prep. I do it. Yeah. In fact, bodybuilding's expensive, and I'm a single mom, so it was Mother's Day. Mother's Day was coming around, and I was like, I need to make some money for this show that I'm doing coming up. So I posted on Facebook and told everybody that I'm taking orders and raising money for the show. So in a week, I had like 15 cakes to make. um, I made good money, but yeah, I mean, I did it, and it's just I feel like if you don't have that mentality to get through baking cakes and not having that willpower to not like lick the batter and stuff, you probably shouldn't be in bodybuilding. I don't know.
That was one of my wake up calls too. That's when I realized that I couldn't do with the nutrition in the food. I was like, yeah, this isn't the sport for me. Then I'll just talk to people that do it then who are actually able to control their urges, unlike me who really can't. But when it comes down to baking cakes, though, what is your favorite kind of cake to bake? I gotta ask it.
Um, well, my all-time favorite that most people request for me is my carrot cake. Yeah, and that's everybody's favorite. But I did one recently. I did this one in prep, and this one was actually really like I kind of did have to really power through that one. It was a strawberry cake, but I made a white chocolate mousse in between the layers, and then there's white chocolate buttercream, and then to mix with the buttercream that I put on the outside for the decoration purposes and the color. There's this thing I made. It's Jello it's like a strawberry crunch, like those ice cream bars that have that strawberry crunch. So I made something similar to that and put that in the buttercream to decorate it with, and that one was tough.
Well, damn you! Now I'm almost starting to drool now talking now, so I'm gonna have to go and get something to eat as soon as we're done here, which happens most of the time that I talk about that kind of stuff. I should have known better, but hey, I fell for it, everyone. But I mean, just being a mom, being a bodybuilder, being a baker, probably doing other stuff too. What
Full
is your
time.
full-time job? Absolutely. I mean, what is your time management like? Because that's like 4 or 5 things, and even doing two of those things is enough to make me not as happy of a person.
Yeah, so I mean, it is hard to juggle everything, but I feel like um, when you want to do something, like you just make time for it. It's a priority. So yeah, it requires me waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. If I want to get my cardio in before my daughters get up, 4 o'clock in the morning to do that. And um, I used to have a job that allowed me to go on my lunch breaks and be able to go to the gym and things like that. But I switched jobs, so it kind of made it easy when, like, especially if when I worked from home, I'd just go to the gym, take a break during the day. But it's my days are busy. It's very rare that I get to just sit down and chill out and relax. My relaxing time is going to bed. And with bodybuilding, sleep is very important, especially on prep. So trying to get to bed, by 9 o'clock. So yeah, it's go go go. And sometimes during prep, I am that mom that's like, "Hey, you want to watch TV? Let's sit on the couch for a little bit." So, but at the same time, I try. My daughters are my priority, so I try to be as involved as I can with them. You just got to push through it.
Well, and what was your friends and family's reaction like when you announced them, like, "Hey, I want to give bodybuilding a try"?
So my friends are just, I think I have a very close, tight circle of friends, and they're all very supportive of me no matter what. So friends wasn't a thing. I think my mom was very skeptical about it. She didn't know if it was healthy to lose that amount of weight and all that stuff. But I think once they realized that I did well in it, they were like, "All right, well, I guess this is her thing." And they actually lived with me. Their lease was up at the rental house, and they were building a house, so they actually moved in with me for a short period of time, about 6 months, and I was on prep during that time. Um, and at first, it was so I think they were there to see everything that was involved, and they saw how hard I worked. The early mornings doing the cardio, going to the gym, and juggling being a mom and everything. I think they gained a respect for it, and ever since that time, they've been really supportive of it and very proud of what I accomplished.
That's a common theme that I've found doing this podcast is that more people, like, if they spend more time around it, especially the sport, they just come to an appreciation of the sacrifice and dedication. Because a lot of people, when they just hear about bodybuilding, they don't understand that sacrifice and dedication that takes place. Where I think once they really get a development, because like so many people just don't understand that it's more than just like I told you before, it's more than just the working out and going on stage and posing. It's, the cardio, the nutrition, the sleep, the just
What?
water, and just bathroom breaks too that come on top of that water too. Try getting a sleep schedule where you just sleep from 1 hour without getting up in the middle of the night. I've met few people that have been able to, achieve that. But I mean, when it comes to just the difficulties of the sport, one thing that I would have never assumed is that for so many people, posing is the hardest thing for them. It's harder than the nutrition. It's harder than the working out. What has been your experience with posing?
So, um, it's been tricky. I'm I hate to say this out loud because I'm probably going to get crap for it, but I'm not one of those people that spends a whole lot of time with posing. Um,
We've had some of them on. Don't worry, you're not the only one. There's been dozens of people I think that have said the same thing. So yeah.
because it with my schedule and how busy of a life I have, it's like after I'm done with the gym and everything, it's like the last thing I want to do is spend more time in posing. So a lot of, but this last time I did hire a posing coach and also just one on one with my coach, having some extra posing time. We worked on it more than what I had been because I mean, I was at the national level stage this last time, and I knew the competition was going to be a little bit, a little bit higher than the other local shows I've done. So I worked at it a little bit more, but I know that this next go around, whenever I hit the pro stage, I'm probably going to have to make it a point to practice posing more often in the off season, even though it really sucks, when you're not lean. But I just want to get confident to nail those poses, and that way you'd have to go up, and that's the last thing you need to worry about.
Well, out of your poses that you do, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
My least favorite is my front double.
What?
Yeah, I just don't like it.
That's like our third person out of the hundreds of bodybuilders I've had on that said their front doubles are least. What about it is so bad?
I just feel like it doesn't accentuate my assets very well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I feel like with the side try and the side chest, like it just
Were you always a physique competitor? Did you start off in figure? Because out of the people that I've talked to, their physique, I mean, most of them start off at a lower level, and then some of them are just that genetically built that like they can just start off in physique. Where did you fall on that?
my very first show, I was figure. Yeah, and I thought I was gonna stick with figure, and actually last year was my first time competing against since that first show. So St. Louis, I did figure and I crossed over into physique as well because my coach was like, "You put on a decent size of muscle, like let's give this a go." And at first I was like, but I like figure." But after doing physique, I loved it. I thought it was so much fun because you're able to showcase your, your hard work more with the different poses and the routine and all that stuff. It's just a lot more fun. So definitely, judges' feedback was like, "Yeah, you need to be in physique." So
Yeah, the figure just seems a little bit more of a robotic kind of like pose where it's just, yeah, you just got the four of them and then you just kind of turn really. But yeah, the physique is really where you can kind of let it fly a little bit more and
yeah,
do all that. And what is that moment like for you though when you get to walk up on that stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked so hard on? And I mean, let's be honest, preps are not fun. And I've had some people say that preps are fun, and then I just want to volunteer to drive them to the nearest insane asylum because just for the safety of the public. But what is that moment like for you when you finally get to walk up on that stage and show off all that hard work that you've just put in so much work in?
I mean, it's a great feeling. I mean, the nerves kick in a little bit. So I feel like when I'm on stage, I kind of black out and I don't know what's going on, but I'm doing it. And I get through it. But I think the feeling afterwards is what's just amazing. You're like, all right, this is what I came to do. I did it. So hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what that would be like myself just being up on that stage. And a lot of people talk about too, it's like for the amount of work that you guys put in this sport to go on that stage sometimes for only like a minute at the most. It's crazy to me. I mean, it's like I for any of the sports that I played, I mean, I put in, probably about a third of the effort that you guys put into your sport, and like I was on there for hours at a time, multiple times a week, and it's just that to me is the most amazing part too. It's like you put in all that effort for that little amount of time. But I love to ask people that have won their pro card, what was that moment like when they announced your name and you realized, oh my God, I'm a pro now? Because so many people don't understand that that pro card is the highlight for so many people that I have on, because that is the affirmation that, you can compete in the pro shows now and you can, all that hard work is paid off. What was that moment like for you?
It was awesome. With prejudging, I won first in the open. In prejudging, I kind of already knew because me and a girl kind of battled it out a little bit. They switched me from center next to her, and then I fought my way through it and they put me right back in the middle. And so that feeling, like when I got off stage, it was just like, I did it. I came to do, like, this is what we worked so hard to do this last year. And that feeling is just amazing because like all that hard work that you put into it is just that was it. That was what we came to do.
Absolutely. That must have been just an amazing feeling. And I mean, now my favorite question to ask in this entire podcast, what is your go-to post-show meal?
I go to, so I don't really ever have a specific one, but we were in New Jersey and I actually grew up in Panama City, Panama.
What?
Yes. So yo hablo español también.
So were you the one redhead in Panama then?
Yeah.
That must have been very interesting. I might have to ask you a couple questions about that, because that is, I mean, yeah, I could not
Oh, yeah.
imagine. Yeah.
Even here in Missouri, like if we're out and about and there's Hispanics out speaking Spanish, like I love just interjecting myself in their conversation in Spanish and they're just like, "What?"
Well, first off, I got to ask, so how were you born in Panama? Like, what was the circumstances that led to you being born there?
Well, I was sorry, I guess I shouldn't say born and raised, but so I was born in New Mexico. We moved overseas. So I lived in Costa Rica for a couple years and then moved to Panama and then so lived there until I was 13. my parents are missionaries, so we moved over there for that, and so it was, yeah, I
I
mean,
would
a
have
great.
guessed either I would have guessed either missionary, but I was like, do we have any military bases in Panama? And I was like, oh, so I was either gonna guess military or missionary. So yeah.
Yeah, there were military bases, but not anymore.
That must have been an interesting childhood. That must have been something. So
It was awesome.
I honestly wish I could just speak Spanish one time so I could like understand what sometimes they're saying and then just interject. I speak fluent German and that applies that's only benefited me once in my entire life. So I don't know why that I decided to take that in high school and college as opposed to Spanish, which I wasn't the brightest move. I mean, yeah, I've only been able to use it once when someone that I was working with also was from Germany. So that was everyone learn a language that you might actually be beneficial in. Don't be that one person where like on my resume I'll put down, yeah, I can also speak fluent German, and everyone's like, that doesn't apply to anything that will ever happen at this job ever. So
And do they ask you say something in German?
yeah, well, and then I'll if I know that they don't know what it means, I'll probably just say a swear word or something like that too, or
Right.
something. It's like Doomkopf or something like that, which everyone look up that one. I'm not even going to explain it to everyone, or Scheisse, something like. But that's a whole different thing. But yeah, so but I mean, first of all, that's a great. I totally even forgot what I was gonna. Oh yeah, so I was gonna ask go
Post
to post show meals. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, so growing up there, I love Latin food. It's like my all-time favorite thing. So there's a Cuban restaurant that was pretty close by. So that's where I went. I had some what they call plátanos, which is like the green banana. Um, so and ceviche. I don't know if you know what that is, but yeah, so just had a few things, and it was delicious. I didn't want to overdo it that night, so it kept it pretty light.
The only Spanish that I know is that I memorized the scenes from Goonies. If you've seen Goonies, where Corey Feldman is talking in Spanish to the maid, I've watched that movie so many times that is the only Spanish that I know, and it's not good. And that and Donde está la biblioteca Pedro, which is from Dodgeball. So I've
Right.
learned a few Spanish phrases throughout the movies, but nothing. Yeah, that's all. Hey, if I ever go to Mexico, I'll know where the library is at least. So that's
That,
as long as the guy's name's Pedro too. So you gotta find that out too. But I'm not gonna lie. With this pale Norwegian white skin, anything spicy for me is a no go. Like I will lose about 15 pounds. So hey, if I am looking to cut, because I got a friend's wedding coming up next month, maybe I will have to eat some spicy food. A couple of weeks ahead of time. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, for me, I've always made the thing where I would just rent out a Five Guys and just say you're gonna feed me until I either puke, pass out, or die. Either way, I'm getting my money's worth. But so many people don't understand post show blues, and that is a thing that is very prevalent in the sport. And for anyone out there this might be your first ever podcast, it's just you're not going to look like that 365 days out of the year the way that you look on stage. A lot of these people that are getting started in this aren't aware of that as well, and they don't understand that, like, hey, you're not at your healthiest when you're on the stage. You are going to have to put on weight. What was that like for you when you first realized that? And is it easier for you to accept that as your career is on, that like no matter how hard I work in this prep, I am going to have to put on weight after the show?
yeah, I think my first go around it was pretty rough, and then my second go around was kind of rough too. Like I after I competed last year, I kind of struggled with it a lot, just because it's super easy for me to gain weight. I have no problem doing that. Losing weight, I have to work my tail off, literally. Um, so yeah, whenever you work so hard to lean down and then with all that weight to come on so quick and easy, it was really meant like I had to get through, that mentally last year. But this year, I don't know, like my mindset is completely changed. And, I'm up like 8 pounds from the show, but I don't feel like I'm good with it. Like I feel great.
See, I wish, and I know it's because of different factors, but I just wish a lot more women that I had on would have that sort of male perspective that when I talk to male barbers, they're like, just put on as much weight as possible. Go ahead. I will gain 40 pounds and I do not care. Like I need it. But yeah, it's just, and that's, yeah, I've talked to some people that like, they try to maintain that stage look year round and it's just, it doesn't end well for them. Again, though, I do have to say, I have talked to two of those genetic freaks that I hate more than life itself, where like they were born with a six pack basically, and then you're just like, okay, just screw you. That's
Yeah.
just ridiculous. They are the one percenters ever, like the 0.001. My dad still has a friend who to this day he could eat 10 Snickers bars a day and he's not going to gain an ounce of fat, and it's just like
No, I'll smell a Snickers bar and my body's like, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and add that as you ate it.
I'm convinced that if I drive past a milkshake store, I gain at least a pound. just by looking at it. I'm convinced. So I already mentioned this before, but cardio is the bane of my existence. I hate it more than life itself. And when I say cardio, I mean actual running. I go for walks all the time. Luckily, I live right next to a nature park, so I'll be going on a walk tonight as well. But what is your relationship like with cardio? Because unfortunately, when you become a bodybuilder, you sign a deal with the devil when it comes to cardio.
That is true. Um, I don't think anybody loves cardio,
I've
but
met a few of them, and I wanted to kick them off.
yeah, I don't know. Something's wrong with them.
I have a friend that runs marathons, and that's a mental illness that I don't even want to try to get into.
Yeah, no,
I've always said I want to go to the end of one of his marathons and have a sign that says you didn't have to do this.
right. But my relationship with cardio, like I said, I don't think I love doing cardio. It's not my choice, but at the same time, I've just grown. It's just part of what you have to do, and I think it's actually. I guess I am kind of the crazy ones. It's actually kind of nice because you just get on the cardio machine, you put on a movie on Netflix or a show, YouTube, whatever, and you just pass the time. So yeah, I mean, you just kind of get to a point where it's what you have to do to get the results you need. So you just do it.
I would agree with you, but whenever it gets too hot outside, like if it ever gets in like the upper 90s, I'm not going out. I'm using the treadmill downstairs. My house is a freaking ice box. I'm not gonna lie. It's like 60 some degrees is like the thermostat that we have it set at. So like you're not even gonna lose any weight running on. It's gonna be still so cold. You're not even gonna sweat. It's just
Right.
literally just the and during COVID, I ran out of movies and TV shows to watch about 2.5 months in. So like I literally just had to zone in, and so yeah, that was that. But yeah, I will say it does have its benefits. It is very healthy for you. It's good for your heart. So as much as I hate it, and like I said, like the walking aspect, I love going for long walks, stuff like that. Like that's my form of cardio. I also like going for bike rides, but I haven't been on one for a while now. I just mainly do the walking, but I mean, sleep too. You talked about it a little bit, but it is the most important thing in this lifestyle. The most important thing, probably just your overall life in general. But so many people in this lifestyle, they struggle with sleep, and it's totally understandable because as you get more leaner for a show, there's a thing that happens where people don't understand that you can get so tired that you can't sleep. And that is a thing that most people do not understand. But when you're especially cutting for a show, it's something that happens. But what does your sleep schedule look like? How do you sort of try to maintain at least somewhat of a sleep schedule, being that you're also a mom too, and you have a full time job, you're a baker, you're a bodybuilder? I mean, that enough is making me want to fall asleep just even mentioning all those things.
Right. Um, I've never had trouble sleeping. I'm somebody who I love to take naps. Bedtime's like my favorite time of the day. So I've never struggled with sleep, and even with prep, like I don't have it near as bad as other people, but I mean every once in a while, I will wake up to like go to the bathroom for the third time, and it's just like you're just so hungry and you just can't fall asleep. Like that happens to me occasionally, but overall I don't really have struggles with that.
I'm just gonna moment of silence for anyone else that's slubbering. As you can tell, I'm that type of hyper where I can never take naps. A nap for me is just lying down with my eyes closed for about half an hour and not falling asleep, but just lying there and trying to get something. So yeah, I am not blessed like that, and I am more of a night owl myself. There have been times where I can guarantee my guests are getting up by the time I'm going to sleep. It's not as bad as it used to be as I'm getting older now. I am trying to get somewhat of a decent sleep schedule, but it is definitely still out there. But I mean, let's be completely honest as well. You're not the average looking woman. If you're to walk out in public dressed the way you are right now, you are going to get stared. I always like to sort of compare it to being like a mini celebrity, where it's just like you're going to draw people's attention just because it's human nature when they see something that's not the normal to just be like, oh wow, that's fascinating. What has that been like, and has it gotten easier for you as you've gotten more and more into the sport, just to sort of realize that like, hey, I am going to draw more people's attention?
Yeah, I mean having the red hair doesn't help
That too.
either. I mean,
I blame South Park.
yeah, but growing up in Panama where I am the minority, I mean, I got stared at a lot whenever I was growing up, so I guess maybe I'm used to that. So, um, but yeah, you just kind of get used to it. I mean, I'm proud of the body that I've built. Um, there are some situations, I'll wear like t-shirts and stuff just to cover up my arms, just because. But for the most part, like one thing I noticed this last time in prep, like when I was out and about, just in my gym clothes and tank tops, I received so many compliments from strangers, and they like just receiving support from strangers just coming up to me at the store, out and about, like they just come up and just tell me how much they admire my dedication and that they know how much work it goes into it, and be like, "Oh, I wish I had your arms," or whatever. So, um, I you never know how people are going to react. I'm sure some people are like, "Gross," but I don't care. Like they can think whatever they want. But yeah, it was amazing just to see a lot of strangers and people just make comments like that. Like it was just awesome, and it kind of helps. I mean, they're just a stranger, but those little compliments just help you push through and just be more proud of what you're doing. So
Yeah, it's always just a weird thing to sort of stand out in a crowd. I'm 6'3", so that sometimes happens to me. Like I went to my first ever bodybuilding show this last weekend, and I was the tallest person there by a good 2-3 inches. So I sort of learned that, but people just don't understand how far a little compliment can go to a lot of people, especially when they're struggling. Like there have been times where I've been on, doing cardio or working out at the gym, and just one little compliment by someone saying like, "Oh, you have great form," or doing something like, I mean, it really does make a difference to everyone out there. So I cannot, stress that enough. But this is a question that I think to myself every single time that I have a bodybuilder on, and it's just human nature in me, even though with how many that I've had on, I even ask myself this when they're telling their stories. Why do they do this? Why do they put themselves through this? I hear all these prep brain stories. I hear all these stories. And I mean, you're well aware of everything that happens with, prep and all the stuff that goes into it. And human nature in me is like, why do they do this? Obviously, I know why they do it because I've talked to so many of them and it's so inspiring. But I bet you still hear that all the time, just either from friends, from family, or just from people in general, just going up to you and going, Mara, why do you do this to yourself? What is your why? How do you like to answer that?
um, I don't know. I enjoy it. As much as prep sucks, like I enjoy the structure. I enjoy the suck that comes with it. Cause like you said, it comes back to that your mentality, like your mental part. Like I just feel like each time you do prep, you learn so much about yourself. And what I tell people is that feeling that you get after the stage, like you just feel so great and empowered, and that's the feeling that you're trying to achieve. And once you get to that, like it makes all this suffering that went on during prep, like it's not even a. I don't think back and be like, yeah, that's terrible. Like you just get through it. So I mean, I don't really know what my why is. I enjoy it so much, and um, with the dedication that comes with it, I just hope that that can kind of trickle down to my daughters and that they can see that no matter what you do in life, if you put your mind to it, you can achieve whatever it is that you want to.
I mean, this is definitely a sport of delayed gratification where you're not going to see those changes overnight, and you're not going to. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand when they're asking the why is this they don't understand that you're making an investment in yourself when you're becoming a bodybuilder, just even when you're getting in shape. Because I always like to make the comparison between like if you're an alcoholic and if you're someone who, works out a lot. If you're an alcoholic and you take one day off of drinking, you've already made like significant progress. But if you go to the gym one time and look at yourself in the mirror the next day, you will have seen no change unless you're on the treadmill for like 20 miles or something like that. Then you might see it like just a few pounds off, but like you're not going to see any drastic change. So it's just a lot of people go into this lifestyle thinking that like, oh, it's only going to take me a couple of weeks. I'll lose this much weight. And then they don't understand how much of a dedication this takes and how much time it takes as well. So that's one thing that I hear a lot, from a lot of people. But now we go to the last two questions before we wrap things up. I mean, if someone were to walk up to you and say, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
Oh, I really don't know.
You wouldn't change the prize money so that you guys could like make living wages as opposed to having to work another job and be a baker too?
That actually that is a really good point. I wish there was more reward to it financially because it is really expensive, and I don't think people understand how expensive it is. Like the time and money invested from the beginning to the end. I mean, just supplements and things like that. Not even talking about the show itself, but um, I mean, I don't know if there's really anything that I say would change.
I mean, people just don't understand how much in the minus people are who compete in this sport. Like you're not I mean, you have to be like top 3 at the Olympia to really even I think break even when it comes to money that you make from I mean, it's that's another thing too where I was like, the guy who invented this sport that's the greatest. It's like as jokingly I always say, it's like, this is the greatest Ponzi scheme that's ever invented. You make these people compete and then you make them pay you to go. But it's like, you just look at that and you're like, how are they not financially supported? Where it's like, it's hard enough to do this lifestyle in and of itself, but then to factor in everything else in life. Like if I had nothing going on in my life, literally nothing, no family, no nothing, no anything, didn't have to worry about money, and I still want to be a bodybuilder, it's still hard enough as it is. Just
Yeah,
doing that, going to the gym every day and going and following that. So, but adding on all that other stuff, it's like, yeah, if they could just have a stipend of like even just like 20, 30, $40,000 that you just make a year, just for being a pro, really, just to help people at least a little bit,
right,
to have like a balance. I'm not saying pay them like millions of dollars just for being pro. It's like, just make it so that they have a little bit more breathing room, and plus you're going to get better results than that way anyway, because more people are going to have more time to focus on,
exactly.
the bodybuilding aspect.
Yeah,
So
they could treat it more like a professional sport, I guess, but it is what it.
that and judging. I mean, I'm sorry, like I've heard stories of judges, 2 weeks apart. If you go to separate shows with different judges and you have the same look as and you have the same lineup, you can get different results. Believe me, as a baseball pitcher, there were times where I told my catcher, move aside this next pitch, we're going to hit this ump because this guy's not giving us any calls, basically. But I mean, it's just to have a more of a base example of like, this is exactly what we're looking for. Just try your best to do this, and then have everyone judge it that way, because it's just like a lot of sports, it's up to human error, and there can be a lot of it, and it's just, that's the one thing that I would change to as well.
Yeah, and thankfully I've been successful with all the shows that I've competed in. But yeah, it's what I tell people is like, if you're in bodybuilding, you kind of have to develop a tough skin, and you have to do it without the mentality that you're going to go up there and win, because you don't know who's going to show up. The person that showed up might have worked a little bit harder than you, and maybe what the judges are looking for. So you just have to have the mentality that you're just doing it for yourself, and you just have to do your best and see what happens.
Yep, absolutely. And that just, I mean, it's just part of the sport. And yeah, that tough skin. I mean, yeah, you're in a sport where you're getting judged by others, where it's like you have to, and there's so many little things happen on, show day as well that can really impact your score. And so many little enigmas in that. But when we do have you on a year from now, because I'd love to talk to you in a year to sort of see where you're at in your progress, and where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding? Where would you like to be at in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved when we have you on a year from today?
Goals achieved. Well, of course, I want to hit the pro stage, and I think every bodybuilder's dream is to hit the Olympia stage one day. So I feel like I'm still pretty like a fresh, what do you call that? A fresh chicken,
Yeah.
whatever. But because this was my fourth show that I've done. Um, so I feel like I still have a long ways to go in my bodybuilding career, and so um, but I mean, I have goals in life, financially be more successful, and more financial freedom, things like that. But I mean, overall, I just live life and be happy and enjoy the most out of it is all I can say.
What's one area in your body that you hope that you've improved on the most when we talk to you in a year?
I'm gonna say my glute ham tie-in area.
Oh, so the body part that comes the easiest for you, you're gonna try to get it even bigger?
Okay, well, I have like my glutes are good, my quads are good, my hamstrings are what I had to really work at this last off season as well. So my personal goal is just to get that glute ham tie-in a little bit more noticeable. So
Well, I will hold you to it then. We'll look at some of her photos then next year before we have her on, and see if she's done it. And now, lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
well, my coach has been with me along the way. So Ryan Weitzel's my coach, and you know, uh, we've had our ups and downs, and but he's become a great friend. And so I just want to give a shout out to him because he's been there since the beginning. And so yeah,
Yep, yep, that is awesome. I'll leave a link down below for him as well. And again, I'll leave a link for Mara here. And everyone, go and give her a follow. And I say this every time, buyer beware. You will get inspired to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies, and maybe get in shape. But again, I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your journey with us. It was an absolute delight to talk to you.
I appreciate it.
Well, everyone, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.